coast to coast. Every culture, every angle. This is Arise America.
Welcome to Arise America. I'm Folake Adesugba. Let's get right into it. Now, the White House press secretary is defending the president's claim that he can end birthright citizenship with a swipe of his pen. Speaking outside the White House this morning, Sarah Huckabee Sanders told reporters there are a number of legal scholars that think the president has the authority to end birthright citizenship in the U.S.
For the last several months. Look, there are a number of legal scholars that think that there is certainly a lot of ground, but the big issue here that you have to look at is the reason we're in this position in the first place, and that's because Democrats in Congress have failed to help fix our broken immigration system, and the president is looking at all options, and he'll make a decision ultimately about what's best to secure our border and to maintain law and order in our country. Look, we've done a lot for the House, but if you look at those 10 states, there are also places where the president's overwhelmingly popular in those locations, and I think that the president's the best messenger for the party. He's had an incredible, historic first 2 years in office, and he has a great story to tell, and he's been doing that all over the country for the last several months.
Now, the head of the Anti-Defamation League flew to Pittsburgh to attend funerals of those killed at the Tree of Life Synagogue. CEO Jonathan Greenblatt laid stones on Staff David memorials for each of the 11 victims. Greenblatt said U.S. President Donald Trump did the right thing by immediately declaring Saturday's massacre an act of anti-Semitism, but he said the president's rhetoric in the past has served to inflame people who would do harm.
I think we need all of our leaders to lead, and we know that in an environment where anti-Semitic incidences are up, we saw a marked increase last year, 57%, including a spike of almost 100% in K-12 schools and 90% in colleges and universities. We need our leaders to lead and ratchet back the kind of rhetoric that emboldens extremists and to speak out unequivocally when there's intolerance. So whether it's the President of the United States, who certainly has the biggest platform, or the President of a university, or the President of a local school board, everyone has a responsibility to interrupt intolerance. I think it was a good thing that the President said what he did immediately after the incident, calling it an act of anti-Semitism, because unquestionably it was. The question, though, is what he does now, in the days, in the weeks, in the months, and truly the years after. Does he demonstrate, consistently the kind of compassion that I think the country needs? And does he find a way to speak out in a clear and consistent voice against anti-Semitism and all forms of bigotry? Because when the words of white supremacists find their way into his speeches, and when their rhetoric is being retweeted from his account, it sends a signal. That needs to stop, and it needs to stop now. We should have a zero-tolerance policy on intolerance, and it starts with the president.
Well, U.S. President Donald Trump says the number of military troops deployed to the U.S.-Mexican border could go as high as 15,000. Trump told reporters at the White House that the move would be aimed at preventing the entry of a caravan of migrants traveling from Central America. The caravan is still nearly 1,600 kilometers from the border. Trump says that the U.S. was going to be prepared and that the migrants are not coming into our country.
Blame anybody. I think we're doing well with the House. We're going to have to see. It's a lot of people. I've campaigned for a lot of candidates that were down a little bit. Now they're up. But we're going to see. I think we're going to do well in the House. I think we're doing really extraordinarily well in the Senate. And also, as you know, Rick Scott, who's been a great governor, and hopefully he'll be your new senator. No, not fear-mongering at all. Immigration's a very important subject. The Democrats have let immigration in our country get out of control with their horrible not allowing us to have any votes to get passed. We need Democrat votes to change the immigration laws. They haven't given us any votes, and I actually think that they will. As far as the caravan, which is very dangerous, you see what's been happening. As far as the caravan is concerned, our military is out. We have about 5,008. We'll go up to anywhere between 10 and 15,000 military personnel on top of Border Patrol, ICE, and everybody else at the border. Nobody's coming in. We're not allowing people to come in. If you look at what happened in Mexico 2 days ago, with the roughness of these people in the second caravan that's been forming, and also, frankly, in the first caravan, and now they have one forming in El Salvador, and we are thinking very seriously, immediately, stopping aid to those countries, because, frankly, they're doing nothing for the American people. Immigration is a very, very big and very dangerous, a really dangerous topic. And we're not going to allow people to come into our country that don't have the well-being of our country in mind. They're trying to get up by truck and by buses. We're going to be prepared. They're not coming into our country. And one other thing important, we're not doing any releases anymore. We're not going to release and let them never come back to trial. We'll build tent cities, we'll build whatever we have to build in terms of housing, but we're not doing releases. What's been happening over years is they would come in, release them, and they'd never show up for their trial. And we now have 25 or 30 million people in this country illegally because of what's been happening over many years. So we're not going to allow it. It's dangerous, and it's very unfair to our citizens. With that being said, I want people to come into our country, but they have to come in legally, and they have to come through merit, a merit system, because we have many companies, as you know, car companies, Foxconn, that does the Apple computers and iPhones. We have many, many companies coming into our country. We need people. We want them to come in, but we want them to come in through merit, and we want them to come in legally.
Well, meanwhile, dozens of immigrants have arrived on the doorstep of the Roman Catholic Diocese of El Paso, Texas. 3 buses driven by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents dropped off the group of children and adults who were met by applause. The diocese had 150 cots and clothes ready for the immigrants from Honduras, El Salvador, and other Central American countries. Their arrival stems from a new policy in which ICE says it no longer has the resources to hold immigrants awaiting asylum, so it is releasing them into the community. Elsewhere, a top Turkish prosecutor said that Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi was strangled as soon as he entered the Saudi consulate in Istanbul as part of a premeditated killing, and that his body was dismembered before it was disposed. A statement from Chief Istanbul Prosecutor Irfan Fidan's office also said that discussions with Saudi Chief Prosecutor Saud al-Mujab have yielded no concrete results despite good-willed efforts by Turkey to uncover the truth. The statement is the first public confirmation by a Turkish official that Khashoggi was indeed strangled and dismembered after he entered the Saudi consulate on October 2nd to collect paperwork needed to marry his Turkish fiancée. Meanwhile, France's foreign minister described Khashoggi's death as a crime and odious. He added that the French arms industry is not dependent on sales to Saudi Arabia, just as it weighs the killing of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi.
What we have just witnessed is a crime. It is a crime made only more odious by the fact it was perpetrated inside the consulate. It is a crime against a journalist. And beyond the fact it was committed against Mr. Khashoggi, it is a crime against fundamental human rights. So it is important that this crime is punished, its authors identified and truth established. And today, despite the Saudi authorities recognizing a murder, we are not satisfied. Truth must be established, so the investigations needs to be more pursued. There's an investigation carried by Saudi Arabia and there's an investigation carried by Turkey. Both need to go until the end, and depending on the outcome of these investigations, we will take sanctions against the guilty. We are absolutely not dependent on our economic relation with Saudi Arabia. I am talking about the geopolitical balance in the region, and we do not have a strategic partnership with Saudi Arabia for many years. There are exaggerations on weapons sales because we look into the figures of French arms sales. We can see Saudi Arabia only accounts for around 7%. So we are not dependent on Saudi Arabia on that matter. And we are also not independent from our economic interests in the region. And that is not only weapons, there is oil, environment, or transport infrastructures. All of that forms part of our relationship, but our essential relationship is the strategic one.
And speaking of Saudi Arabia, police are investigating the mysterious deaths of two sisters from Saudi Arabia whose bound bodies washed up on New York City's waterfront. The sisters' bodies were discovered on a bank of the Hudson River, about 362 kilometers from Fairfax, Virginia, where they were reported missing in August. Police identified them as 16-year-old Tala Faria and 22-year-old Rotana Faria. Investigators said they have yet to determine how the sisters died. And U.S. Secretary of Defense James Mattis has called for ceasefire talks for the Yemen war to happen within 30 days. Yemen's civil war is being fought between a U.S. and Saudi Arabia coalition against a Houthi insurgency backed by Iran. The war broke out in 2015 and has destroyed much of the country, leading the United Nations to report that the nation is on the brink of famine. Mattis was speaking at the U.S. Institute of Peace and said the conflict has gone on long enough.
Now, war, I will just tell you, I've got a little experience in it, is basically one tragedy piled upon another tragedy. You know, welcome to war. But our goal right now is to achieve a level of capability by those forces fighting against the Houthis that they are not killing innocent people. The longer-term solution, and by longer-term I mean 30 days from now, we want to see everybody around a peace table based on a ceasefire, based on a pullback from the border, and then based on ceasing dropping of bombs that will permit the special envoy, Martin Griffiths, who's very good, he knows what he's doing, to get them together in Sweden and end this war. That is the only way we're going to really solve this. Improved accuracy of bombs is still a war. So we've got to move toward a peace effort here, and we can't say we're going to do it sometime in the future. We need to be doing this in the next 30 days. We've admired this problem for long enough down there. It's basically two-pronged. One, it's defend. We have to defend what we have in outer space that is used for navigation, communication, peaceful purposes, commerce, banking, all these kind of things, and military intelligence, surveillance satellites. We're going to have to put satellites up that can be defended or can be resilient against attack, resistant to attack, or can be replaced swiftly, that sort of thing. So we're going to have to defend what we have, but also we're going to have to be prepared to use offensive weapons.
Meanwhile, the UN Special Envoy for Yemen, Martin Griffiths, welcomed the recent calls for the immediate resumption of the political process and measures to reach cessation of hostilities in Yemen.
The Special Envoy Special Envoy for Yemen, Martin Griffiths, welcomes the recent calls for the immediate resumption of the political process and measures to reach a cessation of hostilities in Yemen. The Special Envoy will continue to work with all parties to agree on tangible steps to spare all Yemenis the disastrous consequences of further conflict and to urgently address the political, security, and humanitarian crisis in Yemen. He urges all concerned parties to seize this opportunity to engage constructively with the current efforts to swiftly resume political consultations to agree on a framework for political negotiations and confidence-building measures. In particular, enhancing the capacities of the Central Bank of Yemen, the exchange of prisoners, and the reopening of Sana'a Airport. The Special Envoy is encouraged by the positive engagement of the government of Yemen and Ansarullah, and will continue to work with all concerned parties in the region to reach an inclusive political settlement to end the conflict in Yemen.
And United States Defense Secretary Jim Mattis has reiterated that the U.S. has a history of taking very seriously their responsibility to protect the Republic of Korea people and their freedoms. He was speaking to reporters after meeting his South Korean counterpart for the 50th Security Consultative Meeting in Washington, the Allies' annual top defense dialogue. Citing a push for diplomatic progress with North Korea, the United States and South Korea in October scrapped a major military exercise, Vigilant Ace. The move was aimed at trying to nudge North Korea, which despises such U.S.-South Korean exercises, into negotiating about giving up its nuclear weapons in a way that can be verified. And Washington's de facto ambassador to Taiwan has reassured the self-governing island of American security backing against threats from China. Brent Christensen said in a news conference in Taipei that the U.S. considers any attempt to determine Taiwan's future by other than peaceful means to be a threat to regional security and a matter of grave concern to the United States. China considers Taiwan its own territory to be absorbed using force if deemed necessary and has lately stepped up its threats in an attempt to undermine President Tsai Ing-wen. The U.S. cut formal ties with Taiwan in 1979 to recognize Beijing, but the sides maintain robust unofficial military and diplomatic ties.
Any effort to determine the future of Taiwan by other than peaceful means represents a threat to the peace and security of the Western Pacific and is of grave concern to the United States. We are opposed to unilateral attempts to change the status quo. We welcome efforts on both sides to engage in dialogue that reduces tensions and improves peace and stability in the cross-strait relationship. Promoting security cooperation and improving Taiwan's self-defense capability go hand in hand. As you have heard, the United States recently approved the second arms sale to Taiwan in 2 years of $330 million. Our obligation to support Taiwan in maintaining a sufficient self-defense capability against coercion is a foundational element of the Taiwan Relations Act. This policy of supporting Taiwan's defense needs, consistent across 7 U.S. administrations, both Democratic and Republican, has helped foster Taiwan's prosperity and democratic development while also bolstering cross-strait and regional stability. The United States has long been a vocal supporter of Taiwan's meaningful participation in international organizations, and we continue our informal consultations and engagement to allow Taiwan to have a more substantive role in the international community. As a democratic role model, a reliable partner, and a generous donor, Taiwan's broader participation in the world stage will have benefits for the global community in even more ways.
And U.S. President Donald Trump told reporters outside of the White House that the campaign for the Republican Party ahead of the midterm elections was going very well and claimed that his party was doing very well with the women vote. He claimed that women want security, they want safety, in reference to a caravan of migrants traveling towards the U.S. from Central America, which Trump has portrayed as dangerous.
Very talented. It seems that the campaign is going very well. Looks like we're doing very, very well in the Senate. A lot of seats that were not really being thought of in terms of victories a year ago now are looking like they could very well be victories. And the House is a lot of people. I mean, there are a lot of people, and I think we're going to do well in the House also. But I know we're doing well in the Senate, and it looks like we're doing okay in the House. We're going to have to see. There are just so many people. And by the way, this is not a constitutional amendment. You don't need a constitutional amendment for birthright citizenship. I believe that you can have a simple vote in Congress, or it's even possible, in my opinion, this is after meeting with some very talented legal scholars, that you can do it through an executive order. Now, I'd rather do it through Congress because that's permanent, but we can certainly do it through, I really believe we can do it through executive order. One other thing. If President Obama can get DACA approved, if you look at DACA, where he actually said, well, this isn't legal or this I can't do, but I'll do it anyway, and then he gets a judge to approve it, and it'll ultimately be decided by the Supreme Court, I hope quickly, But certainly if he can do DACA, we can do this by executive order.
You're watching Rise America. Time for a short break, but plenty more still ahead, so please do stay with us.
From coast to coast, every culture, every angle. This is Rise America.
There's an old saying in Nigeria, thoughts and dreams are the foundation of our being. At First Bank, we dare to dream and strive to innovate, continuing our over 120-year tradition to be the first to offer new products and services to our customers. You first. First Bank.
Nigeria. We are 198 million productive people with over 900,000 square kilometers of fertile land. Nigeria's banking system has emerged strong and resilient from the 2016 crisis, which has enhanced our productivity in agribusiness and manufacturing. Come, invest in Nigeria's agribusiness, manufacturing, and value-added mining. Enjoy the Central Bank of Nigeria-led initiatives in funding interventions, stabilized exchange rate, friendly capital repatriation regime, and many more. The Central Bank of Nigeria's robust monetary policy and interventions under President Buhari's administration and positioned the economy to target and attain a GDP growth of 6% with a strong and growing external reserves. Come, invest in Nigeria. Nigeria, ready for business. There is nothing as symbolic as a door. It shuts to protect you and opens to give you much more. Everyone wants to succeed, not just count pennies. When life gets tough, I remember a few things. Difficulty and struggles are part of what life brings. Your strength comes from the support around you. A true friend believes in what you do, there to hold your hand through any weather. I found my partner, and we walked through doors together.
Diamond, your bank.
From coast to coast, every culture, every angle. This is Rise America.
Welcome back to Rise America. I'm Folake Adesugba. Now, 2 utility workers were killed and 2 others were hurt when the maintenance helicopter got caught on power lines and crashed in rural northeastern New York. Pieces of the aircraft dangled from power lines before falling beside cornfields in Bigman Town, about 32 kilometers south of the Canadian border near Lake Champlain. The Federal Aviation Administration said the helicopter came in contact with power lines and caught fire at 4:16 p.m. Transmission line inspection and maintenance is traditionally carried out by workers who climb tall line towers or use a helicopter with a 4-person crew. Both methods are very risky.
At the time of the incident, was actually working on the power lines or the structure that supports them, and at some point something catastrophic, something happened that caused the aircraft to crash. That's not been determined yet what really the cause was.
But I saw something off in the distance, kind of smoking. Thought it was like maybe a transformer had blown up or something. So as I kept coming up on it, bigger, obviously flames and everything, and as I got it closer, I could tell that it was not something else, but you could see people down in the field trying to do CPR.
Elsewhere, the U.S. Senate candidates from Indiana met in their final debate 1 week before the election. The hotly contested matchup pitted incumbent Democrat Joe Donnelly against Republican businessman Mike Braun. Libertarian Lucy Branton also appeared in the debate. The debate was held at the Toby Theater at Newfields, formerly the Indianapolis Museum of Art. Immigration was a major topic, with much of the focus on President Trump's statement that he's considering using an executive order to end the Constitution's guarantee of birthright citizenship.
Would you vote to end birthright citizenship?
Well, I'm the only person on this stage who voted 3 times for a border wall. I voted against sanctuary cities. I've stood for secure borders with John McCain when in 2013 we passed legislation that would have provided an additional 20,000 border agents to the border. In regards to birthright citizenship, that's the 14th Amendment of our Constitution. And so how this should be handled is by the Congress.
There's going to be legislation on it, and I think we'll see how that pans out, but it's the accumulation of many years of neglect, of neglecting border security. Thank goodness we're finally attending to it.
Before we move on, Mr. Bond, very quickly, the question was about legislation about birthright citizenship. Would you support it or not?
I will wait and see what the discussion is on it. I'm not going to say whether I support it or not until I read the legislation.
The reason this has been around a long time is it's in the Constitution of the United States. It's the 14th Amendment. It's the guiding document of our nation. I voted 3 times for border wall security. But here's the thing. This is an issue you have to have bipartisan support for. I've passed 50 pieces of legislation with a Republican partner every single time. And Mike can't even name a single Democrat that he would work with.
All the problems that are associated with it, finally we've got leadership, we're attending to it. The senator says he's going to vote with the president. He never votes with him on other things like health care, tax reform, and so forth. So I don't know that you can take that to heart.
But here's what we don't want to do. Mike Braun supports a lawsuit today, that would take away pre-existing conditions coverage, that would end the opportunity to not have lifetime caps, so that young person who's on an Indianapolis IPS bus with asthma and their chest is tightening and they need the inhaler, if he has his way, those pre-existing conditions aren't covered anymore.
There's only one person here that's actually done what you're talking about. It was called the Affordable Care Act, which Joe was all for. It's the Unaffordable Care Act. It was doomed to fail because you had big government get in cahoots with big health care, specifically big health insurance. I took on the health insurance companies 10 years ago, and regardless of what his Democratic talking points are, I would never be for any replacement that doesn't cover pre-existing conditions.
Well, elsewhere, the bicultural, newly elected governor of the southern Japanese island of Okinawa plans to visit the United States with a message to the American people. Stop building a disputed military base and build peace instead. Denny Tamaki said he wants Americans to understand what has been, what is, and what will be to solve this problem. Tamaki plans to visit New York and other U.S. cities in November, although dates and other details are not yet decided. His father is a U.S. Marine he has never met before. Tamaki took office on October 4th after campaigning for a disputed U.S. Marine base to be moved off the island and for the American military presence on Okinawa to be reduced. He is the first person with an American parent to lead Okinawa and stressed that his bicultural roots make him perfect to relay a message to the U.S. public.
Hi, Dad. 元気って国政を目指して
A problem in Okinawa is that after the war, and even now, about 70% of American military facilities are based there and are burdened by it. I want the American people to understand what has been, what is, and what will be to solve this problem. When I go to America, I think I will want to wave to the media and say, "Hi, Dad. How have you been?" Maybe 100 people or more might claim to be my dad, but if he reads this AP article and there is such an opportunity, I want him to know that I would like to meet him. It's not about whether Mr. Trump's policies are good or bad. I want to carefully watch what his goals are and how they can be mutually beneficial and create a win-win situation. They say Henoko is the only one,
and Oko is the only solution. But we think that it is definitely not the case and that they are refusing to think critically. The American side has made multiple proposals on the reorganization plans, and the Japanese government should consider them. The Japanese government should be relaying ways to put Okinawa at ease and promote peace in Japan, along with the message of the people reflected by my election victory to the American government.
You're watching Arise America. We're headed for a short break now, but there's still plenty more still ahead, so please do stick with us.
From coast to coast, every culture, every angle. This is Arise America.
There is a reason Africa is called the new frontier. What was once potential is now an opportunity ready to be seized. Once revered for our resources, today's wealth lies in our people. People who build the cities that shape the future. People who know an idea in one place means business in another. A generation for whom technology means there are no borders, no boundaries. We are the new lions in a brave new world, kings of the urban jungle. And there's a bank that puts the world in our pocket and the future in our hands. UBA, Africa's global bank.
Thinking of banking in Africa? Think Zenith. In today's fast-moving, fast-changing world, you need a financial partner that understands your unique expectations. A bank with presence in major financial centers across the world, with the enabling platform to facilitate seamlessly, whenever, wherever, however. A bank with best-in-class financial solutions from a superb combination of technology and human touch for easy, fast, and secure banking that creates real value. Turning dreams into reality is now in your hands. People, technology, service. Zenith Bank, in your best interest.
As a fashion writer, I know how quickly trends are created and changed. In business, it's no different. To stay ahead, I needed a plan flexible enough to meet my changing communication needs. More Business 2.0 didn't just give me voice and data in one package. I got a whole lot more. With More Business, setting up my website was no problem. But I'm not just a fashion writer. I also own a home decor store before I decided to open an accessory store. With my customized More Business plan, managing my staff's communication is easy. No matter how frequently they come or they go. With 9 Mobile's new online self-service this week, I could adapt my plans to include this.
From 2,000 Naira, choose a business bundle, customize your staff's voice and data lines, and enjoy a variety of add-on business services. Dial *200*5# now to subscribe. More business.
From coast to coast, every culture, every angle. This is Arise America.
Welcome back to Rise America. I'm Folake Adesugba. Now, Pakistan's top court on Wednesday acquitted a Christian woman who is sentenced to death in 2010 on blasphemy charges, a landmark ruling that could ignite mass protests and violence by hardline Islamists. Chief Justice Mian Sequib Nisar announced the verdict to a packed courtroom and ordered Asia Bibi released. She has been held at an undisclosed location for security reasons and is expected to leave the country. The charges against Bibi date back to a hot day in 2009 when she went to get water for her and her fellow farm workers. 2 Muslim women refused to drink from a container used by a Christian. A few days later, a mob accused her of blasphemy. She was convicted and sentenced to death.
I think ultimately Asia Bibi got justice from the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and all credit go to Justice Asif Saeed Khan Khosa and the Honorable Chief Justice Sir.
Over now to Afghanistan, where an Interior Ministry official said that a suicide bomber has struck outside the country's largest prison on the eastern edge of the capital, Kabul, killing 7 people, including prison workers and security personnel. Interior Ministry spokesman Najib Danish said the attacker earlier today targeted a bus carrying prison workers. The sprawling Polisharki prison houses hundreds of inmates, including scores of Taliban. According to a prison official, the attack occurred near the prison gate, where a number of visitors were waiting to pass a rigorous security check before entering. No one has taken immediate responsibility for the attack. And India has unveiled the world's tallest statue, which cost $430 million to build. The 182-meter-high structure in the western state of Gujarat is a bronze-clad tribute to independence leader Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said the Statue of Unity would serve as the major tourist attraction, but locals say this is a waste of public money and that the funds could have been put to better use. Mr. Modi, who unveiled the statue at a grand inaugural event, said it is a symbol of India's integrity and resolve. Air Force planes showered flowers on the statue, which was designed by decorated Indian sculptor Ram V. Sutar. Meanwhile, the Indonesian search and rescue workers believe they have found the fuselage of the Lion Air passenger jet that crashed on Monday with the loss of 189 people on board. Navy divers are reported to have located a 22-meter object 35 meters below the surface. The finding comes as the Transport Minister announced the technical director of Lion Air has been removed from his job.
We have detected an object under the water and we're still investigating it and using divers to investigate even further. We got divers about 100 looking at 5 points within the radius of the Tanjung Karawang and Tanjung Pakis. With the operations today, we want to tell the media we have managed to find 49 body bags. The actual number of bodies to be determined soon, and all have been sent to the Indonesian police.
Elsewhere, Russian President Vladimir Putin denounced what he described as Russia-phobia in Ukraine and the Baltics. He spoke in Moscow at the Congress for Compatriots Living Abroad. He also lamented that tension and unpredictability was on the rise in the world, while years-long agreements between states are being torn up.
The situation in the world is not simple. Tension and unpredictability is on the rise. The basis of international legislation has been undermined. Years-long agreements between states are being torn up. Russia-phobia and other forms of extremely aggressive nationalism are being used in Ukraine. We know it, in Baltic countries and in other states.
Protesters marched in several cities across Brazil against far-right Brazilian President-elect Jair Bolsonaro. In Sao Paulo, several thousand marched along the central Paulista Avenue, many draped in rainbow flags and holding signs against fascism. Bolsonaro's victory moved Brazil, the world's fourth largest democracy, sharply to the right after 4 consecutive elections in which candidate leaning from the left-leaning Workers' Party won. Like other right-leaning leaders who have risen to power around the globe, Bolsonaro built his popularity on a mixture of often outrageous or offensive comments and hardline positions. You're watching Arise America. Time now for a short break, but there's still more ahead, so please do stay with us.
From coast to coast, every culture, every angle. This is Arise America.
Nigeria. We are 198 million productive people with over 900,000 square kilometers of fertile land. Nigeria's banking system has emerged strong and resilient from the 2016 crisis, which has enhanced our productivity in agribusiness and manufacturing. Come, invest in Nigeria's agribusiness, manufacturing, and value-added mining. Enjoy the Central Bank of Nigeria-led initiatives in funding interventions, stabilized exchange rate, friendly capital repatriation regime, and many more. The Central Bank of Nigeria's robust monetary policy and interventions under President Buhari's administration and positioned the economy to target and attain a GDP growth of 6% with a strong and growing external reserves. Come, invest in Nigeria. Nigeria, ready for business.
There is nothing as symbolic as a door. It shuts to protect you and opens to give you much more. Everyone wants to succeed, not just count pennies. When life gets tough, I remember a few things. Difficulty and struggles are part of what life brings. Your strength comes from the support around you. A true friend believes in what you do, there to hold your hand through any weather. I found my partner, and we walked through doors together.
Diamond, your bank.
In a fast-paced world, you need the ability to make everything move at your own speed. Stay ahead and not miss anything. That's why I'm on More Life Complete, which lets me call everyone in Nigeria on all networks at just 15 kobo per second. You can also call any line in the United States, Canada, UK, Germany, India, China, and Malaysia too, at just 15 kobo per second. And just when you think life can't get any easier, I get 15 free minutes to call anyone in the 9 Mobile family. Just booked your ticket to London. Before you think I've got to compete on More Life, I also get 15 minutes free browsing to catch up on sports updates and anything online. Now that's what I call the complete package.
From coast to coast, every culture, every angle. This is Arise America.
Welcome back to Rise America. I'm Folake Adesugba. And now, according to Facebook's latest results, user growth has slowed and its revenue has missed forecasts. An average of 1.49 billion people used Facebook's social network on a daily basis in September, up 9% on last year, but below expectations of 1.51 billion. Growth was flat in the US and Canada and fell in Europe. Facebook sales rose by 33% to 13.7 billion in the third quarter, but fell short of expectations and trailed the prior quarter's 42% gain. The company, which also owns WhatsApp and Instagram, is grappling with a shift in its business as user growth slows in its most profitable markets. And shares in General Electric plunged by more than 8% following investor concerns about the turnaround prospects at the once mighty industrial giant. General Electric admits that U.S. civil and criminal authorities had widened investigations into accounting practices at the firm. It also reported worse than expected third quarter results. General Electric would drastically cut its payment to shareholders in order to pay down debt and restructure its struggling power business. And 4 months after signing an executive order creating the National Council for American Worker, President Donald Trump is announcing that over 160 companies and organizations are pledging to provide new career opportunities for more than 6 million Americans. Trump is announcing that since the unveiling of his pledge to America's workers, businesses and groups have promised to create 6.39 million new opportunities for workers. The pledge includes apprenticeships, continuing education, on-the-job training, and retraining.
The job market at 3.7% is the lowest in 50 years. It's the best unemployment numbers we have in 50 years. And that's wonderful, but we actually need workers now. I just feel that they can train people far better than the government can train people. And they go specifically to that company. But I don't think there's ever been a way that we can go as a government and train people like you can train them for your great companies. And I also know that what happens oftentimes is people that didn't know too much, and they go in, they get trained, they get a job, they do phenomenally well within the company. They go up in rank, they go up right like a rocket ship, and they go up in salary and pay, and even ownership in many cases, where they have stock ownerships and options and everything else. Nobody's hot like we are, though. There's no other country on this planet that's hot like the United States. And a lot of people said this can't happen because we're big. We're a big country. If you look at comparing us to, as an example, China, we're going way up, and China's been hurt over the last number of months, and they're having a hard time, and they'll be fine. And let's see what happens, but we have a chance to make a fair deal because China's been hurting us, and trade deals have been hurting us, and we're changing them. We have almost 600,000 manufacturing jobs since the election, and it's going to go much, much higher than that. And these are among our best jobs. I mean, if you look at jobs, those are great jobs. They're high-paying jobs. They're skilled jobs. People are being trained for those jobs.
A full roundup of the biggest stories making headlines in the United States. Our U.S. correspondent Leah Duncan spoke to Idea Asen. Let's have a look.
A slew of brokers are raising their price targets on Facebook this morning after those results, and those moves are helping to push Facebook shares higher. The social media giant relieving investors after it forecasts that margins would stop shrinking after 2019 as costs from all of those scandals that it's been involved in eases up just a bit. Now, Facebook's profit topped estimates in the reported quarter, but it missed targets for growing monthly users and reported its slowest revenue growth in about 6 years. But clearly today it looks like investors focusing on the good news. Now, slowing growth after years of strong results has been a top concern for Facebook. The main Facebook service and its Messenger sibling grew monthly users to 2.27 billion, which is up 10% compared to a year ago, but that was still below expectations as well as last quarter's pace. Now, CEO Mark Zuckerberg said that the problem is that users are gravitating towards features such as direct messaging and viewing videos faster than it can find ways to place ads there while attracting clicks and not annoying users. Now, adding to the challenge is the fact that the majority of new users are from countries including India, Indonesia, and the Philippines, where advertisers are focusing more on TV, print, and outdoor advertising. Now, as for the upcoming election, Mark Zuckerberg said that would be a test of some of the company's new systems that it has put in place, which he then expects to sort of fully roll out by the end of next year. So overall, it looks like a solid report from Facebook, and shares are rising 6% this morning.
Well, I hope Facebook can definitely find its feet because, you know, it changed social media. But anyway, top U.S. car maker General Motors is among the companies that are reporting results this morning. Leah, fill us in.
Yes, well, the number one U.S. automaker, GM, posted some pretty impressive results this morning with profit coming in well above expectations in the reported quarter. The company saying its full-year earnings would come in at the high end of its forecast due to strong demand here in the United States. That is being driven by its new pickup trucks, now slowing demand in China, which is the world's largest automaker, has begun to put a dent in the auto industry, but GM was still able to report record equity income in the quarter from its operations over there. Last week, a smaller rival, Ford, stuck to its profit targets for the year despite high commodity costs and a slumping demand in China. And earlier this week, Fiat Chrysler did the same. GM shares are surging 7% right now. And we also have some good news for the owner of fast food chains KFC, Taco Bell, and Pizza Hut. That's Yum Brands. Profits and revenue came in above estimates there. Strong sales at its KFC and Taco Bell chains helped to counter some weakness over at Pizza Hut. Taco Bell, which is Yum's fastest growing brand, recorded a 5% rise in sales in the quarter, beating expectations for a 3% rise. Now, Pizza Hut remained a weak spot for Yum due to declines here in the United States and over in China, where it faces a lot of competition. Chains including Yum and McDonald's are fiercely competing as they try to hold on to the customers they have and add more customers with all of their cheaper menus and discounts and new breakfast items. So Yum shares getting a pop today. They're moving higher by about 3%.
Well, on the trade front, Leah, we have an update on the Pacific Trade Pact, which appears to be a rare bright spot amid global trade tensions. What's the latest there?
Well, that's right. Amid an intensifying U.S.-China trade war, we're getting news of a rare bright spot for global commerce this morning. New Zealand says that a landmark 11-country deal that would slash tariffs across much of the Asia-Pacific region will come into force at the end of December, at the end of this year. The deal moved forward after Australia became the sixth nation. Canada, Japan, Mexico, New Zealand, and Singapore. Now, you may recall that the original 12-member deal was thrown into limbo early last year. That is when U.S. President Trump withdrew from the agreement to prioritize protecting U.S. jobs. Now, the remaining nations, led by Japan, finalized a revised trade pact in January, which is called the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP. Now, the deal will reduce tariffs on economies that together amount to more than 13% of global gross domestic product, a total of $10 trillion. Now, with the United States, it would have represented 40%. The success of the pact has been touted by officials in Japan and other member countries as an antidote to counter growing U.S. protectionism. They're hoping that Washington will eventually recommit to the agreement. We'll have to wait to see what happens there. Now, as we know, Trump's economic agenda appears to remain focused on China right now as that trade war continues and shows little signs of abating at the moment. Just yesterday, we know the president warned that he is ready to impose additional tariffs on Chinese goods if an agreement with Beijing could not.
Well, thanks for the roundup, Leah Duncan, a RISE U.S. business correspondent in New York there. Now, the auction site eBay has been analysts' estimates for third quarter profit by managing costs at a time when bigger rival Amazon.com missed revenue estimates and forecast sales below expectations for the holiday quarter. Shares of eBay, which also expects fourth quarter profit marginally above analysts' estimates, rose as much as 6.0% after trading hours. The shares have fallen 27% so far in 2018. The San Jose, California-based company has been splurging on product developments, brand marketing, and making its website more user-friendly to better compete with increased competition in the online shopping sphere, while also cutting jobs to reining costs. Now, Kanye West says he's distancing himself from politics. On Twitter, the rapper claims he's been used to spread messages he does not believe in. He has been a vocal supporter of President Trump, but this decision appears to center around a campaign he was linked to known as Blexit, run by a conservative commentator, Candace Owens. It encourages Black Americans to quit the Democratic Party. She claims the musician had designed clothing for the campaign, something which the rapper has now denied. Meanwhile, media mogul Oprah Winfrey and her longtime friend Maria Shriver joined forces for one last social media push to their followers to get them to vote. Maria Shriver is no stranger to politics and elections. As the daughter of a Kennedy and the ex-wife of former California State Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, Oprah and Maria made a video which Oprah posted on Twitter for her 42 million followers. Their heartfelt message saw Oprah tell her followers that everyone was equal in the voting booth and they should make their voices heard by voting because the country depended on it. The U.S. midterm elections are due to take place on November 6th. And a year after her breakout role in Girls Trip, Tiffany Haddish is indeed busy. Up next is a Tyler Perry written and directed comedy, Nobody's Fool, which pairs her with Tika Sumpter. They play sisters with Whoopi Goldberg as their mom. Once Haddish's character gets out of jail, they discover that Sumpter's boyfriend is catfishing her. Haddish, now 38, says she has a goal to make 50 movies by the time she's 50.
Is it really your goal to do 50 movies by age 50?
Yes, that's the goal.
Oh, wow.
They're not all going to be great.
But this one is.
This one is.
Yeah.
This one is fantastic.
50 by 50, wow.
Yeah, 50 by 50. Life can go anywhere. I say to them, figure out what it is you love and then do that every day. Do something towards that goal every single day and use whatever you're going through right now as fuel to get to the next place, to get to the other side, to the better side.
And over in the UK, music star Adele has topped the list of the richest British people under 30 for the third consecutive year, and she's been off work the whole time. Adele has been taking time off to be with her husband and baby since she finished her massive world tour last summer. But when you're Adele, you keep making money even when you're doing nothing. Her music has helped her fortune grow to a whopping £147.5 million, beating the likes of fellow pop star Ed Sheeran, who came second, followed by Harry Potter actor Daniel Radcliffe and One Direction singer Harry Styles and Harry Potter actress Emma Watson. Now in sports, Russell Westbrook scored 32 points in the Oklahoma City Thunder's 128-110 victory over the Los Angeles Clippers on Tuesday. The Thunder outscored the Clippers 39-10 in the third quarter at one stretch, scoring 20 straight points. The Thunder led 93-77 at the end of the quarter. They shot 70 from the field in the period while holding Los Angeles to 24% shooting. Paul George also had 32 points, Steven Adams had 18 points and 10 rebounds, and Dennis Schroeder added 15 points for the Thunder, who won their second straight game after 4 defeats. Daniel Gallinari led the Clippers with 27 points, but he scored just 4 in the second half. Lou Williams scored 17 points and Tobias Harris added 15 for Los Angeles. And the Portland Trail Blazers defeated the Houston Rockets at the Toyota Center in Houston, Texas. The Trail Blazers led the Rockets 19-15 after the first quarter of play. As has been the theme so far this season, the Rockets struggled to score, missing many open shots. While Chris Paul and Carmelo Anthony made a combined 2 of 16 shot attempts in the first half, Damian Lillard was the leading scorer with 15 points as the Trail Blazers led at 51-36 at halftime. The Trail Blazers continued to dominate in the third quarter, outscoring the Rockets and led 85-62 with Damian Lillard scoring 22 points. Without the injured James Harden, the Rockets were unable to mount a fourth quarter comeback. The Trail Blazers went on to win the game 104-85. Well, that's all for this edition of Arise America. Thank you for being a part of the program. I'm Folake Adesugba. From me and the entire team in Abuja, the US and London, goodbye for now.
From coast to coast.